Nobody in Caldwell Flats feared Garrett Masterson because he was violent. They feared him because he was silent. For 7 years, the powerful rancher had lived alone, rode alone, ate alone, and trusted almost nobody. Then, one afternoon, a letter arrived from Harlan County, Kentucky, and the words inside would change his life forever. The letter came from 24-year-old Eliza Callaway, a poor young woman desperate to escape a home where she no longer felt safe. She had discovered Garrett's name in a newspaper advertisement seeking a respectable woman willing to become his wife and manage his household. Eliza hesitated for 2 nights before writing. She knew nothing about Garrett except his frightening reputation, but she believed an honest, cold man might be safer than the life she was leaving behind. She told him she could cook, keep accounts, manage a home, and work hard. Garrett answered briefly. When her 3rd letter arrived, he finally wrote, "Come on the 15th. I'll meet the stage. Bring only what you need." Eliza packed everything she owned into one small trunk and traveled hundreds of miles toward a stranger. When the stage reached Caldwell Flats, she saw Garrett waiting away from the crowd beneath a dark hat. He was tall, still, and impossible to read. When she stepped down, he walked straight toward her. "Miss Callaway." "Mr. Masterson." He studied her face before lifting her trunk without asking. As they rode toward the ranch, silence filled the wagon. Finally, Garrett said, "My house is plain." "That's fine. People in town won't approve of this." Eliza looked across the endless prairie. "People always have opinions." Garrett almost smiled. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone more nervous," Eliza quietly answered. "I am nervous. I'm just not going to show you today." For half a second, Garrett smiled. At the ranch, Eliza discovered a clean, sturdy home with a wide porch overlooking distant hills. Over the next 3 days, they slowly learned each other's habits. Garrett showed her the kitchen, supplies, and ranch ledgers. Eliza asked questions and remembered every answer. On the 4th morning, Garrett finally spoke. "If you're still willing, we can marry before the week is over." Eliza looked at him carefully. "Are you still willing?" "I asked you first." "Yes," she whispered, "I am." Garrett nodded once. Neither knew Caldwell Flats had already decided their marriage was a mistake, and someone was determined to stop them before they ever reached the altar. The trouble began the moment Garrett and Eliza announced their wedding plans. Preacher Hollis Dunbar questioned their decision, insisting that marriage should never be arranged for convenience. Garrett remained calm and told him they only needed a date. Dunbar demanded 2 weeks, but Garrett gave him 7 days. By the next morning, Caldwell Flats was buzzing with gossip. Some called Eliza desperate. Others claimed Garrett had ordered himself a wife like a piece of furniture. Eliza heard the worst of it inside Harding's dry goods store. 2 women were laughing about her arrival when she quietly stepped behind them. "Good morning," she said. Their smiles disappeared. Eliza bought her flour and thread, then walked outside with her head held high. She made it half a block before stopping. For a moment, the loneliness finally caught up with her. She refused to cry, but her hands trembled around the basket. That afternoon, Garrett learned what had happened. He finished checking the ranch fence, rode into town, and walked straight into Harding's store. He looked at the women and spoke without raising his voice. "Eliza came here because I asked her to. Whatever you think about me, she doesn't deserve your cruelty. If you have something to say about my choices, say it to me." Nobody answered. Garrett walked out. That evening, Eliza sat on the porch when she heard his horse approaching. He stood beside her, staring toward the hills. "You didn't have to defend me," she said. "I know. Now they'll talk even more." Garrett looked at her. "They were going to talk anyway. I don't care what they say about me, but I care what they say about you." Eliza turned toward him. "Why?" Garrett was silent for several seconds before answering. "Because you came here believing I would keep my word, and I intend to honor that." His simple words touched her more deeply than any romantic speech could have. But 3 days before the wedding, another problem arrived. A well-dressed man named Douglas Fenn rode into town and went directly to Garrett's ranch. When Eliza saw him, her heart dropped. Fenn was connected to the family she had escaped in Kentucky. He claimed her aunt wanted her to return home. Eliza refused. "That place isn't my home anymore." Fenn warned her that she barely knew Garrett. Eliza stepped closer to Garrett and answered, "I know enough." Fenn looked between them and realized she had made her choice. After he left, Garrett didn't question her past. He simply said, 3 more days. Eliza nodded. Neither realized how much their feelings had already changed. The next morning, just after breakfast, a ranch hand came racing back from the southern pasture. 30 cattle were missing. Someone had deliberately cut the fence during the night. Garrett rode out and discovered tracks leading toward Dunbar's property. The evidence looked almost too perfect. Someone wanted Garrett to blame the preacher. When he returned home, Eliza immediately saw the tension in his face. She listened as he explained everything. Then she said, "Don't shut me out." Garrett looked at her. "I'm used to handling trouble alone." Eliza answered softly, "Then you'll have to learn something new. If we're getting married tomorrow, we're facing everything together." Garrett stared at her, realizing that the woman who had arrived as a stranger was becoming the one person he no longer wanted to stand without. By noon, the news had spread through Caldwell Flats. Garrett Masterson had lost 30 cattle on the very day before his wedding, and the tracks seemed to point toward Preacher Dunbar's land. Some townspeople believed Dunbar had finally decided to challenge Garrett. Others whispered that Garrett himself had staged the disappearance. But the cruelest voices blamed Eliza, claiming she had brought trouble from Kentucky and poisoned the quiet life of the rancher. Garrett heard every rumor, but this time he refused to face the problem alone. With Eliza beside him, he returned to the southern pasture and studied the tracks again. Something bothered him. The footprints were too clear, almost as if someone wanted them discovered. Garrett followed them beyond the fence and found a broken branch hanging unusually low. Beneath it was a scrap of dark cloth caught on a thorn. Eliza recognized the material immediately. "I've seen that coat before," she whispered. "It belonged to Douglas Fenn." Garrett's expression hardened. Fenn had not come to Caldwell Flats simply to take Eliza home. He had followed her west for another reason. Together, they rode toward town and found Fenn preparing to leave. Garrett confronted him near the livery stable. Fenn denied everything, but Eliza noticed mud on his boots that matched the southern pasture. Then Garrett found a small knife hidden beneath Fenn's saddle blanket. The blade carried fresh pieces of fence wire. Fenn finally admitted the truth. He had arranged the cattle theft to frighten Eliza into returning to Kentucky. Her aunt's husband wanted control over money Eliza had inherited from her late father, and Fenn believed forcing her home would make that possible. Eliza stood silently, realizing how far the people she had escaped were willing to go. Garrett stepped between her and Fenn. "You won't touch her again." Fenn laughed. "You think marrying her makes her yours?" Garrett's eyes hardened. "No, she doesn't belong to anyone. She chose where she wanted to be." Those words broke something open inside Eliza. For the first time, she understood that Garrett had never wanted to possess her. He wanted to protect the choice she had made for herself. Fenn was taken into custody, and the stolen cattle were recovered before sunset. The next morning, Caldwell Flats gathered outside the little church. Eliza walked beside Garrett toward the doors, no longer caring about the whispers. Preacher Dunbar looked at them differently now. He had witnessed everything and finally understood that their marriage was not an arrangement built on desperation. It had become a choice made freely by two people who had found trust where neither expected it. After the ceremony, Garrett and Eliza stood together on the porch of the church. He looked at her and quietly said, "You still willing?" Eliza smiled. "More than ever." Garrett took her hand, and for the first time in 7 years, the feared rancher of Caldwell Flats did not ride home alone. He rode beside the woman who had crossed 800 miles believing she was escaping one life, only to discover she was riding toward another. And from that day forward, the people of Caldwell Flats stopped calling Garrett Masterson the Silent Man. They began calling him the man who finally found something worth speaking for. Wild West Tales stories.